Fred and Rosemary West were twisted, even by the standard of serial killers. The details of Fred's childhood itself just read like a horror story. This couple together have committed at least 12 brutal murders and sexual assaults on young British girls, including their own daughters. Hello everyone, welcome to Missing Piece. I'm Dr. P. First of all, happy Halloween! Are you planning to do trick-or-treats? Well, this year we are certainly having a very special Halloween, and if you're concerned about going out and didn't have enough fun or horror last night, why not stay in and enjoy all the scary crime and mystery stories from Missing Piece? Today we will take a look at another couple serial killer, Fred and Rosemary West. Frederick West was born in a small town of Munchmarkle on September 29, 1941. He was the second of the 6 children of Walter and Daisy West. And some say that he just seems normal, just like any other young boys growing up in Britain. And he was reportedly the favorite child of his mom. However, by Fred's own accounts, sexual abuse of various kinds was very common in the household. Fred claimed that his father had sexual relationships with his own daughters and even taught him bestiality. And also there was a suspicion that Fred's mother started sexually abusing him by the age of 12. But Fred himself had never admitted to it. Fred didn't do so well in school and eventually dropped out of school when he was 15. He was almost illiterate and got himself a job as a farm laborer shortly after. When he was 17, he got into a serious motorcycle accident that put him into a coma for a week and left him some serious head injuries. A metal plate was inserted in his brain, which may have affected his behavior and impulse control, according to some experts. He got a bad temper and often had violent bursts of anger. Shortly after, the young Fred incurred another head injury and possibly permanent brain damage. He then started to stick his hands up a girl's skirt. Fred's subsequent behavior was erratic, and he was eventually disowned by his family when he was accused of impregnating a 30-year-old girl who was Fred's friend. But I mean, to be honest, if Fred's family really had that sexual abuse issue, can they really disown Fred? I don't know, but please let me know in the comment section below. Well, eventually Fred got a job in construction, but he was fired shortly after because he was stealing from the workplace and also having sex with the minors. After some time, he returned home when he was 21 and became involved with Rena Costello, a Scottish girl who had a police record of buggery and prostitution. At the time, she was pregnant with another man's child, however, they just got married in November 1962, which is only 2 months after they getting together. In July 1964, the couple had a child of their own named Annie Marie, along with Charmaine from the previous birth. During this time, Fred worked as an ice cream truck driver. I think that's a pretty good job. I want to be an ice cream truck driver sometimes. But this is the job that gave him steady access to young teenagers who fell prey to his interest. Okay, maybe not so much then. I'll take my words back about being an ice cream truck driver. One day he accidentally ran over a 4-year-old boy and their life in Scotland came to an end. Although the accident wasn't fully Fred's fault, Fred and his family moved to Gloucestershire, where he met Annie McFall and found a job in a slaughterhouse. Unfortunately, this is the beginning of the end of the marriage between Fred and Rena. Their marriage finally collapsed when Rena returned from Scotland, only to find that Fred and Annie were living together, and Annie became pregnant with Fred's child in early 1967. She urged him to divorce with Rena and married her instead. However, Fred killed, dismembered, and buried her in response. Within 6 months of Annie's death, Fred was suspected for another disappearance of a 15-year-old girl named Mary from a bus stop. However, only circumstantial evidence have been produced to corroborate this suspicion. Then, in November 1968, it was during a stint as a bakery truck driver. So again, as a truck driver. He was a truck driver for ice cream and now for bakery. I don't know. Then it was during his job as a bakery truck driver where he met his next wife and lifelong accomplice, Rosemary Letts. So who's Rose? Rose was born in Devon, England on November 29, 1953. Her household, again, was very troubled and abusive, especially from her father. Her father was a paranoid schizophrenic who was prone to violent behavior, serving as a terrifying and dictatorial presence. Growing up, she was sexually abused by her father. And because of her overweight figure and also her father's strict rules, she was prevented from dating guys from her own age. Instead, she pursued relationships with guys that are a bit older than her. When she was 15, her mother Daisy finally moved out of the family house as she had enough of the abuse from her husband, and she took Rose along with her. However, Rose decided to move back in with her father, and not long afterwards she met Fred West, who was 12 years older than her. Though her father objected strongly to their relationship and even threatened Fred directly, Rose became pregnant with Fred's child and found herself looking after children left by Rena. Rose gave birth to a daughter named Heather in 1970. However, due to her temper and resentment for caring for children that weren't hers, she often treated her stepdaughters badly. In the summer of 1971, it was believed that Rose murdered the 8-year-old Charmaine, who was Fred's eldest daughter, as a result of her outburst. Whatever the true circumstances is, Charmaine suddenly disappeared, and Fred was in jail at the time. So in August of 1971, Rita disappeared when she came to look for Charmaine. Because the body was found and had fingers and toes cut off, and was buried in the same general area where Fred buried his first victim, Annie, Fred was suspected for killing her. Another year passed. In January 1972, Fred and Rose were secretly married in Gloucester, and they had another daughter together, Mae West. In order to make room for their expanding family and her business, which is prostitution, they moved to 25 Cromwell Street, where they carried out their murders and rapes later. Fred actually encouraged Rose to have sex with another man, both for the money and also for fun for Fred, while he often watched his wife Rose having sex with another man through peepholes. After moving to a new place, Rose continued working as a prostitute from their home in a room fitted with peepholes for Fred to use while she's doing her business, and red lights outside the house which will be lit when the business is going on to make sure that the children don't enter. Over the following years, she gave birth to 7 more children, of which 3 were fathered by Fred, and another one that may have been conceived by her own father, who kept engaging in incest with her even after she gave birth to her 4th kid. And the other 3, who were of mixed race, were all fathers from her client. Their behavior extended beyond the family circle when, in October 1972, they hired a 17-year-old Caroline Owens as a nanny. They kept making sexual advances on her, but she declined every time. One night in December, she was incarcerated, stripped, and raped. Despite threats that she would be killed and buried in a cellar by Fred, Caroline was able to make an escape and reported both Fred and Rose to the police. Charges were brought against them. But incredibly, despite his existing criminal records, West was able to convince a 1973 court that Caroline had consented to the activities. In addition, Caroline was too deeply traumatized to give any testimonies on the court, so both West were able to escape with a fine of only $50. Over the next 6 years, Fred and Rose killed at least 8 young women who came to the 25 Cromwell Street as lodgers or employees. The first was Linda Goff, a seamstress they personally knew. Next was Carol Ann Cooper, who disappeared while walking home from the movie theater. In December, Lucy Catherine Patterson disappeared from a bus stop while on her way home after Christmas. She was murdered by Fred and Rose, who abducted her, held her captive for a week over New Year, raped and tortured, and eventually killed her. On January 3rd, Fred was treated for lacerations, which is believed to have been inflicted when he dismembered Lucy. From 1974 to 1979, 5 more women, Therese Siegenthaler, Shirley Hubbard, Janita Maria Mott, Shirley Annie Robertson, and Alison Chamber, met the same fate. It is unknown if West killed more over the following years. If they did, and it's not improbable, the only difference would be that the bodies weren't buried on their properties. Some of the girls are known to have been abducted, raped, but then released, which tells us that Fred's vicious sex acts did not result in murder every time. While committing murder, Fred also sexually abused Annie West and other of his daughters. Annie, who was a daughter with Rena, was pregnant with Fred. But the pregnancy has to be terminated soon because it occurs in her fallopian tube. When Annie left home to live with her boyfriend, Fred changed his target and to other of his daughters. For example, Heather, who was the daughter between Rose and possibly Rose's father, and May, who was actually Fred's own daughter. The couple almost came to be exposed when Heather shared a story about the abuse she was suffering with her friend. However, the story didn't reach far enough to help Heather, but instead put her in a very dangerous situation as her parents wanted to silence her. Finally, in June of 1987, Fred and Rosemary strangled Heather to death to silence her. And the couple then dismembered their own daughter and buried her in the garden. Given murder, sexual abuse, and the number of attacks, it's inevitable that this couple will get exposed sometime soon. Fred and Rose were finally exposed in August 1992 by Detective Constable Hazel Savage. Detective Savage actually had known Fred since his time with Rena. When another girl raped by Fred came forward to police, the police obtained a search warrant, and in August, they searched the house for evidence for child abuse. They found pornography and clear evidence for child abuse in the house where Fred and Rose lived, and Fred was arrested for rape and sodomy of a minor, and Rose for assisting in the rape of a minor. In the course of the investigation, Detective Savage uncovered the abuse of Annie West, as well as the disappearance of Charmaine and Heather, warranting further investigation. The result of the interview of the West children, especially the ones who have been threatened by the couple that they will be buried under the patio like Heather, exposed more information that allowed Detective Savage to gain more search warranty and have the property dug up. The test was simplified when Fred confessed to Heather's murder in custody. When human bones started cropping up, Fred confessed to have committed the murders alone in order to protect Rose. While Fred was in custody, Rose became depressed and even committed suicide, but she was found by her son Stefan and saved. However, Fred wouldn't admit to raping any of his victims and claimed that they all wanted to have sex with him. Soon after, the bodies of Annie McFall and Charmaine West turned up as well. As the case against them developed and seeking to protect themselves, Rose cut off all contact with her husband. On December 13, 1994, Fred was charged for a dust count of murder and taken into custody at the Vincent Green prison in Birmingham. On New Year's Day, he hung himself in the cell with a knotted bedsheet. Rose was also put on trial eventually on October 3rd, 1995, first for rape and then for murder, though she never confesses to any of the murders and all the evidence against her were circumstantial. An important witness was Janet Leach, including the stepdaughter Annie, who testifies to her participation in sexual assault on young women and eventually killing Charmaine West and Shirley Robin Hood on her own. Therefore, on November 22nd, 1995, Rose was found guilty of 10 murders and sentenced to life in prison, having to serve a minimum of 25 years in jail. 25 years is too little, right? She will never be released as her sentence is now extended to be a whole life order by the Home Secretary, which prevents any possibility of her to get her parole and getting out. Well, I think that's how law should be, right? Giving penalty to people who deserve it. Anyway, the number of victims from Fred and George is actually believed to be far beyond 12. And we are not sure if eventually we will be able to find all the remaining victims. In October 1996, the Fred and Rose home at the 25 Cromwell Street, which is also known as the House of Horror because of the young females who suffered and died there, was completely demolished. This is the end of our Halloween special limited edition story today. Please subscribe to our channel for weekly crime and mystery stories, and also don't hesitate to leave likes and comments below. See you next time.